A very good evening to everyone, and welcome to lecture number 2 of Cricket South Africa's Level 1 umpiring course, brought to you by Western Province Cricket Umpires Association. My name is Tom Mokorosi, and as usual, my co-presenter for this evening will be Abdullah Steenkamp. I will be covering laws 6, 7, and 8, and Abdullah will be covering laws 9, 10, and 11. Once we are done presenting, and we should finish any time between 7:30 and 7:45 p.m. South African time, then we will take questions from the chat box. And once we've gone through all the questions and comments from the chat box, then we will open the floor up to question and answer sessions by virtue of hands being risen. If you do not get a chance to ask your question, please make sure that you type it into the chat box. We will answer the question. And of course, this lecture, as well as all other lectures, are recorded, and recordings will be posted on YouTube the morning after each lecture. For those of you who missed Monday's lecture, there is a recording of lecture 1 on YouTube. Once I've finished presenting, I will post it into the chat box, but it is also available on the email that you will have all received with today's lecture reminder. All the course material is on there, as well as the logistics for the lectures and the exams. So let's move on to the content for tonight's lecture, starting with Law 6, the pitch. Here we have a beautiful picture of the home of cricket, Lord's Cricket Ground, which has got a lot of strips on its square. And of course, you can see the playing pitch for that particular match is towards the bottom left-hand corner of the picture. I'm sure we all know that the pitch is a rectangular area of the field, which is 22 yards or 20.12 meters in length from bowling crease to bowling crease, and 10 feet or 3.05 meters in width. And we will, in the next law, go to the creases. So if you are not familiar with which is the bowling crease, you will soon find out. There is a graphic illustration of the measurements of the pitch. What's important is that we need to measure the pitch as well as the creases before the start of each day's play and the start of each match. And that is why you'll remember from lecture number 1, Abdullah told us that law says umpires need to be at the ground at least 45 minutes before the scheduled start of play. And the reason for that time before the scheduled start of play that umpires need to be at the ground is to do measurements of the pitch and the creases, as well as oversee the toss. And we will get to the toss in subsequent lectures of the course. The measurements to remember here are 20.12 meters from middle stump to middle stump, or from bowling crease to bowling crease, and 3.05 meters in width. Note that this is wider than the return creases, which we will see and study in the next law. The 3.05 meter width is often seen by the cut that differentiates the pitch from the rest of the square. A lot of people ask whether they need to know the yards or the meters and centimeters? Well, it really depends on what your tape measure has. So for purposes of the exam, you will be presented with true or false, as well as multiple choice questions, where numbers will be given to you in feet, in yards, and in meters and centimeters. So you can choose to remember either of the different measurement types. Who selects and prepares the pitch? Law tells us that before the match, the ground authority shall be responsible for the selection and preparation of the pitch. And then during the match, it is the umpires who shall control the use and maintenance of the cricket pitch. Are we allowed to change a pitch during a match? The pitch shall not be changed during the match unless the umpires decide that it is dangerous or unreasonable for play to continue on it, and then only with the consent of both captains can they move from one strip on the playing square to another strip on the playing square and use that as the match strip for the day, the match pitch to continue the match. Sometimes you get to a ground and there are holes in the covers, so overnight rain has seeped through and made the pitch wet. And then you see that on the second field in the same club, there is another field that was covered sufficiently such that the pitch is dry and fit for play. Again, in this scenario, we would be allowed to change from the one field at the same club to the next field with the consent of both captains. If we have to move the match entirely to another cricket club, a different venue altogether, that in terms of Western Province Cricket Association bylaws, that decision would be made by the local leagues committee. So us as umpires will have to call the local league representative for that particular club, and then we would get authorization from the local league's committee member over the phone. We are not allowed to move venues as umpires on our own or even with the captain's permission. Is the pitch length the same in junior cricket as it is for senior cricket? Law tells us that the governing body for cricket in the country concerned shall determine the length of the pitch for junior cricket. So in South Africa, I know that the length of the pitch for junior cricket under 13 and downwards is the same as the length for senior cricket. But in England, for instance, there are guidelines where reduced length pitches are used for younger age group levels. That is law 6 done. Next, we move on to law 7, the creases. And this is a very good picture of a crease. And we will learn the names of the various creases. We will learn the measurements of the various creases. And I will have you know that for the Cricket South Africa Level 1 exam, there are 10 marks allocated to the names and the measurements of the creases, as well as the measurement of the pitch. So please pay special attention to these measurements. It will be to your benefit when it comes to exam time to answer those particular questions. So this is now what's called the JB Marks Oval. in Potchefstroom, and this was a Momentum One-Day Cup match, domestic 50 over competition. You will see that there are wide line guidelines inside of the return creases. And we will, as I mentioned, get to the names of all the creases shortly. However, I just want to reiterate that this course is based on the laws of cricket, and the laws of cricket are similar to test match cricket playing conditions. If we go back to this picture, this was a test match between India and Australia. And there you will see that there are no wide line guidelines. Okay. In limited overs cricket, we do have wide line guidelines, but in more day cricket or in time cricket, we do not have wide line guidelines. The wide line guidelines are playing conditions that are specific to limited overs cricket. And as mentioned, the laws of cricket are closely aligned to the playing conditions of test match cricket. That is why you will not be tested on the measurements of the wide line guidelines in this particular exam. So let's move on to which measurements and which names of lines we will need to know for the Cricket South Africa Level 1 exam. We will start top right hand of the screen. We have now learned that that crease that is on the far right or the far left of the stumps is called the return crease on both sides, and the two return creases are 2.64 meters away from each other. That is the width of the bowling crease. So if we come a little bit lower from the return crease, we get to learn that the line that the stumps are pitched on is known as the bowling crease, and the bowling crease runs from one return crease, from the inside edge of the one return crease to the inside edge of the other return crease, measurement of 2.64 meters. Then if we come a little bit lower and to the left of the bowling crease, we see the label for this line that runs all the way past the return creases. It is the popping crease, and the length of the popping crease is a minimum of 3.66 meters. Especially for television games, that line is painted by the ground authority quite far, so that if batters run wide, then the TV umpire is able to see whether or not a bat is grounded beyond the popping crease before or after the wicket is fairly put down. In terms of judging a run out, it's very useful for the return crease to be extended significantly. If we come to the left-hand side of this graphic, we will learn that the distance between the bowling crease and the popping crease is 1.22 meters. And quite importantly here, you'll see the arrows are pointing from the back edge of the bowling crease to the back edge of the popping crease. One way to remember how you measure is you always measure the edge of the line closest to the stumps. And you will realize if you look closely, the stumps are pitched on the back edge of the bowling crease. So they're not pitched in the middle of the bowling crease or on the front edge of the bowling crease. The stumps are pitched on the back edge of the bowling crease. That is why when you measure from the bowling crease to the popping crease, you measure from the back edge of the bowling crease, because that's where the stumps are pitched, to the back edge of the popping crease, because that is the edge of the popping crease that is closest to the stumps. Similarly, you'll see the arrows to measure the width of the bowling crease from one return crease to the other. It is the inside edge of the one return crease to the inside edge of the other return crease. And that is because those two edges are the edges closest to the stumps for the respective return creases. And then we have the measurement of the return creases. And again, it is a minimum, this time of 2.44 meters. So from the back edge of the popping crease, running all the way potentially past where the umpire is standing behind the stumps. It could go all the way to the boundary, but generally I don't see this line painted much more than the required minimum of 2.44 meters. And then a reminder of the length of the pitch from bowling crease to bowling crease, or from middle stump to middle stump, 20.12 meters or 22 yards. One way that I try and remember some of these measurements, I find that the most important measurement after the length of the crease for me is what I call the no ball measurement, because the front foot of the bowler needs to land with some part grounded or raised behind the popping crease. We will learn a little bit more about that in the no ball law next week. That measurement from the back edge of the bowling crease to the back edge of the popping crease is 1.22 meters. If you double that measurement, so you say 1.22 times 2, you get 2.44 meters, which is the minimum length of the return crease. If you triple that measurement, so you say 1.22 times 3, you get 3.66 meters, which is the minimum measurement of the popping crease. So by just remembering the measurement of the distance between the back edge of the bowling crease to the back edge of the popping crease, 1.22 meters, you can remember another two measurements. If you multiply that by 2, you get 2.44 meters, which is the measurement of the return crease. And if you multiply that by 3, you get 3.66 meters, which is the measurement of the popping crease. One more practical point is quite often you'll find that these measurements are not 100% exact. You would hope that the no ball measurement of 1.22 meters is 100% correct. You will live with, say, 2 centimeters variance, either too long or too short. Anything more than that, you might consider remarking the crease, because it is a critical measurement. You might get too many no balls bowled during the day if the measurement is less than 1.20, for example. And then what if you find that the length of the pitch is out? So what we have decided as a group of umpires at Western Province Cricket Umpires Association is if the measurement of the length of the pitch, which is supposed to be 2.12 meters, if it is too long or too short by up to 30 centimeters, we will allow that variance and we will not remark the creases. We will inform the captains and of course we will inform the ground authority so that next week they've got it correct. We allow 30 centimeters worth of variance. It does sound like a lot, but 30 centimeters out of 2.12 meters is only a 1.5% variance. So it is not too significant in the bigger picture of the total length of the pitch. If it is more than 30 centimeters too long or more than 30 centimeters too short, then we will have to ask the ground authority to remark one of the creases so that the pitch length is at 20.12 meters. It is a lengthy exercise, and that is why one of the first things that you must do when you arrive at a field is to check all your measurements and especially the length of the pitch so that if you need to remark the creases, then you have enough time to do so before the start of play. The last law that I will be presenting tonight before I hand over to Abdullah is the wickets, law 8. Here we have the measurement of the wickets. We learn that the width of the wickets, and the wickets is the collective noun for the 3 stumps and the 2 bails set up as in picture. So the width from the one end of the off stump to the outside end of the leg stump should be, when correctly pitched, 22.86 centimeters or 9 inches. And again, when correctly pitched, the length of the wickets from the bottom of the stump, which is outside of the ground, to the top of the stumps is 71.12 centimeters. Don't worry too much about these measurements. You don't need to know them for the exam. However, it is critical for practical purposes that you know what adult sized stumps look like, because you do find in South Africa, at least, there are smaller mini cricket stumps in circulation. Just make sure if you are umpiring an outdoor full pitch length match that you have adult stumps pitched into the ground. And when the bails are sitting on top of the stumps, as in picture, then they should meet in the middle and not protrude outside of the exterior of the stumps. And also, quite importantly, a test that you can do as well is to make sure that no full-sized ball can fit between the gap of the stumps, and then you will know that your stumps are correctly pitched. The bails, when in position on top of the stumps, shall not project more than 1.27 centimeters above the stumps. They shall fit between the stumps without forcing them out of the vertical. And below we have a picture of the last match that Mark Boucher ever played. He was injured while on tour for South Africa in England a long time ago now. I'm not 100% sure of the year. But what happened is the striker was bowled, and as the ball hit the stumps, The bails flew up, and one of them hit Mark Boucher in his left eye, and he was never able to fully recover his vision from that injury and was forced into early retirement as a result of the injury. So, what the governing bodies around the world, some of them have done, is come up with a simple piece of string from the one end of the bail attached to the top of a stump so that a bail cannot fly as far as the wicket keeper's face. But of course, as well, another safety measurement that has been put into place by many playing conditions around the world is for wicket keepers, whenever they're standing up to the stumps, to always wear a helmet. Player safety is of utmost importance, not just to us as umpires, but to the lawmakers as well. And those are some of the measurements or measures they've put in place to improve player safety. Sometimes, especially in windy areas, Cape Town is very common for this. We have to play without bails, or we end up playing without bails because the bails keep getting blown off by the wind. The umpires may agree to dispense with the use of bails if necessary. If they so agree, then no bails shall be used at either end. You can't have bails on the one set of stumps and no bails on the other set of stumps. Quite importantly, the use of bails shall be resumed as soon as weather conditions permit. On the right is a video of Abdullah taking through level 1 candidates how to apply the laws of cricket when you have had to remove the bails because they keep falling off. One or two instances or one or two laws are tweaked as a result of not playing with bails. So to finish off my bit of today's presentation, I'm going to play this video of Abdullah in action at Somerset West Cricket Club a few years ago. Well, on one kicked on the basket I'm blowing it. And I'm very old now, and I said, no, it's leave the belt, which is wasting too much time continuously picking up belts. So now we decided to remove the belts. And usually when you decide to remove the belts, there's only one reason. The wind keeps on blowing. And when you do decide to remove the belts from the stumps, you need to remove it from both ends. You cannot have a game where you say, I'm only removing the belts from this end because this is the way it keeps on falling off. Unfortunately, not. The law is quite clear on this. You do decide to remove the belts because the wind blows off. You need to remove it from both ends. So now we've decided to remove the belts from both ends. So now the law changes. All the law now tells us once you decide to remove the belts, is the ball now just needs to touch any of the stumps. So now no need to hit it out the ground, throw it out the ground, do these. People can do it if they want to, but not necessarily. The law tells us all that now needs to happen is for the ball to touch the stumps. If now, from an umpiring point of view, you now need to be unlimited. Because remember, the ball just needs to touch the stumps and can be difficult. I had arguments already in my umpiring career, took off the bails, and the fielding side would say, umpire, kiss the stumps. Batters, obviously, the batters going to say, no, you didn't touch the stumps.
What you need to do is you need to go and consult your colleague. Ask your colleague, you need to stamp yes or no. If you're not sure, what do you do as umpires? Benefit goes to the back. You must be 100% sure that either of you saw the ball at least touching the stance. If not, the benefit to the back.
That is it from me this evening. I will chat to you all later during the question and answer session. I am now going to stop sharing and hand over to Abdullah, who will take us through laws 9, 10, and 11. Thank you very much. Over to you, Abdullah.
Uh, Thank you, Tom. Good evening to you and good evening to the rest of the attendees. Kicking off for Law 9. And Law 9 covers the preparation and the maintenance of the playing area after the game has started. So before the games start, and let's use a test match as an example, and test match spans over 5 days. So before the game starts, before, let's say it starts at 10 o'clock on day 1, before 10 o'clock on day 1, the curator can prepare the field and the pitch as he or she sees fit. They can roll the pitch as long as they want to. They can just basically do anything in terms of getting the pitch and the field ready for the test match. But once the game has started, once that toss takes place, 9:30 on the morning of day 1 with a 10 o'clock start, now the law guides us in subsequent days, for the rest of day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5, how are we now going to prepare and maintain the playing area. Starts off by mowing. So, as I mentioned, before the game starts, the curator will mow the pitch, will mow the outfield. But once the game has started, the law now guides us. So in terms of mowing the pitch and the outfield, both pitch and outfield to be mown on each day of the match which play is expected to take place. So on day 1, before or day -1, the curator will then prepare the pitch. But this is now day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5 of our test match. The law tells us that both pitch and outfield needs to be mowed on each day. Why? We need to try to keep the conditions the same over the 5 days. Yes, I know the pitch will deteriorate over 5 days, but that's natural deterioration. But in terms of the outfield, the length of the grass on the pitch and the length of the grass on the outfield, we need to try to keep that exactly the same. You'll be amazed, and I saw this with my own eyes, how quickly the grass grow overnight, especially on the pitch. That's why it's important that the pitch needs to be mowed on day 2, 3, 4, and 5, as well as the outfield, to try to keep conditions consistent and the same over the 5 days. There are sometimes we do rain early in the morning. The Lord just tell us if it's not possible to mow the outfield, please just notify the captains and of the procedure of how we're going to mow for the day or the rest of the test match. So now we know the pitch needs to be mowed as well as the outfield. So in terms of the timing of this mowing, firstly, the pitch. So now this is mowing of the pitch on day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5. So mowing of the pitch shall be completed not later than 30 minutes before play is about to start. I'll use an example to illustrate this. So on day 1 of our test match, play starts at 10 o'clock and will end at 5 o'clock. Morning of day 2, play again to start at 10 o'clock, but now the law tells us we need to mow the pitch on the morning of day 2. And now it guides us in terms of this mowing of the pitch on the morning of day 2. Needs to be done before 9:30 if we have a 10 o'clock start. So yes, you can mow 9:20. You can do it 9:25, 9:15, 9 o'clock, as long as it's done before 9:30, 30 minutes before play is about to start. So practically, and I'll use test matches as an example. So in the test match, there are 4 umpires, 2 on-field, the TV umpire and the fourth umpire. Fourth umpire play a crucial role here because the mowing, especially of the pitch, needs to happen under the supervision of the fourth umpire. So the umpires, especially the fourth umpire, will usually get to the field 2.5 hours to 2 hours before plays about to start. So play start 10 o'clock. You often find the fourth umpire getting there between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. The fourth umpire then will supervise the mowing of the pitch. The fourth umpire will then discuss with the curator, and usually it happens about 9:15 or 9:20, where the curator will then mow the pitch. But it just needs to be completed before 9:30. So now we know in terms of mowing of the pitch when it needs to be completed. Mowing of the outfield needs to be done 15 minutes before play is about to start. So if we have a 10 o'clock start on day 2, by 9:45 the outfield needs to be mowed. So when it comes to the clearing of debris from the pitch, what is this debris? This debris is these loose stone, loose pebbles that with the batters running on the pitch, the bowlers running, delivering small pieces of the pitch becomes loose and gets scattered across the pitch. So now the law allows for this, and the term they use in the law is debris. The law allows for this debris or the small loose piece of stone pebbles to be cleared from the pitch. So when are we allowed to clear this debris? Before the start of each day's play, we need to clear the debris. And debris need to be cleared after mowing, but before rolling. We'll get to rolling in the rolling of the pitch in the next slide. But before the start of each day's play, that debris needs to be cleared from the pitch. Between innings, debris also needs to be cleared from the pitch. And before you roll between innings, the debris first needs to be cleared. We'll see it later in the slide how we clear the debris, but for now, we're first covering when we can clear the debris from the pitch. Interval for meals, your lunch and your tea interval, the curator needs to clear the debris from the pitch. So these are the 3 instances when debris can be cleared from the pitch. To recap, before the start of each day's play, between innings, and intervals for tea and lunch. So how do we clear the debris? Again, the law guides us. Clearing of debris to be done by sweeping. We use a broom to clear the debris from the pitch. Again, this needs to be done under the supervision of the fourth umpire in international cricket or in test match cricket. There is a but. So we now know we need to sweep the debris off the pitch. But if the umpires consider that if we are going to use the broom to clear the debris from the pitch, this sweeping might be detrimental to the surface of the pitch, and you'll find it often in places like India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, where the surface is not as hard as in places like South Africa, England, Australia, New Zealand. So sometimes with the pitch being a bit brittle, and if you are going to use the broom to sweep, you might take out big chunks of the pitch. So the law allows for, if the umpires consider that if you are going to sweep, it might damage the pitch, you can instruct the ground staff to clear the debris by hand. So now we've covered mowing, we've covered clearing of the debris. Now we're going to cover rolling of the pitch. So now this rolling is after the game has started. So in our test match, before day one, the curator can roll the pitch to his or her heart's content for as long as he or she wants. But once the game has started, the law guides us by when the pitch can be rolled and also for how long the pitch can be rolled. So let's have a look at the frequency and the duration of the rolling. Let's start with, before we get to the duration of the rolling, let's start with after the game has now started, when the pitch can be rolled. Two instances. The first instance is before the start of each innings. And we're now not referring to the first innings of the match. We're now referring to, let's say, in our test match, let's say between South Africa and Sri Lanka, day one, let's say South Africa wins the toss and they're batting first. Game starts at 10. South Africa now gets dismissed for, let's say, 300 at 2:30 in the afternoon. So now at 2:30, and we'll get to in 2 laws times, we'll get to intervals. So when a side gets dismissed, we'll see that there's going to be a change of innings interval. So now, when it comes to the frequency of the rolling, this is now the first instance. Before the start of each inning, Sri Lanka is now going to go bat in their first innings. South Africa was dismissed for 300. Sri Lanka will now bat in their first innings. Now the law tells us rolling now to take place. That's the first instance. And the second instance is before the start of each subsequent day's play. So day two, before the start of day two, the pitch needs to be rolled. Before the start of day three, pitch needs to be rolled. Before the start of day four and day five, pitch needs to be rolled. So now we know when the pitch, this is now after the game has started, when the pitch to be rolled, before the start of each innings, and also before the start of each subsequent day's play. How long the pitch can be rolled? Not more than 7 minutes. That's all the law tells us. Not more than 7 minutes. So can the pitch be rolled for 5 minutes? Yes, it can. Can it be rolled for 4 minutes? Of course it can. For 1 minute? Yes. 30 seconds? Yes. 8 minutes? No. Not more than 7. So that's the maximum time. So when it comes to the frequency and duration, we now know the maximum time, 7. And we now know the only two instances after the game has started when the pitch can be rolled is before the start of each innings. So in the example I used previously, before the start of Sri Lanka's first innings, the pitch can be rolled. Now Sri Lanka gets dismissed and South Africa must now go back in their second innings. The pitch again can be rolled. South Africa gets dismissed in their second innings and Sri Lanka will now go back in their second innings. Again, the pitch to be rolled. So just to give you a practical example of how this works in a test match, and I'll start with before the start of each innings, and I'll again use the Sri Lanka South Africa test match. So what will practically happen is let's say on day one, South Africa wins the toss, they decide to go bat. South Africa gets dismissed for 300. Sri Lanka will now go bat. What will now happen? The umpires will ask the captain of the Sri Lankan side, do you want rolling? It is an option available. If the captain decides no rolling, he or she can decide on it. So the option is there to roll. 99% of the time they do roll, but the option is there. If they do decide not to roll, it's the captain's decision. So the umpires will ask the captain of Sri Lanka, do you want rolling? If the captain of Sri Lanka say, yes, I want rolling, umpires will ask how long you want rolling. Usually the captain will say, let's say 7 minutes. You'll then say 7 minutes. And we'll see in the next slide at international level and at provincial level, you will find more than one roller available. A big roller, a medium one, and a small one or a hand one. We will then ask the captain, there are 3 rollers available. Which one do you want? You want the big roller, the medium, or the small one? What we'll then do is the fourth umpire will supervise this rolling. The fourth umpire will inform the curator that the Sri Lanka wants rolling for 7 minutes and they want the big roller to be used. So that is just practically how it happens before the start of each innings. Before the start of each subsequent day, how does that practically happen? On the morning of day 2, fourth umpires there early. Teams are also there fairly early because they go through their warm-up routines. So whoever's batting on the morning, and let's use our test match, let's say Sri Lanka's batting on the morning of day 2. So practically what will happen? The fourth umpire will go to the captain of Sri Lanka and ask the captain, do you want rolling? If yes, how long? And which roller do you want to use? And that message gets relayed to the curator, and the fourth umpire needs to supervise that rolling. So now we know rolling happens between innings and before the start of each subsequent day's play. So in terms of the timing permitted for these rolling, we know between innings, and we'll see in law 11, there's a 10-minute interval for change of innings. So rolling needs to happen in that 10 minutes when there's a change of innings. But before the start of each subsequent day's play, when it comes to the rolling, when does that rolling take place? There's a window period for that rolling to take place. And there's a 20-minute window period. So if we have a 10 o'clock start, that 20-minute window period is from not earlier than 9:30, not later than 9:50. So anywhere in between 9:30 and 9:50, that is where this rolling will take place. So just again a practical example. So what will happen on the morning of day 2? The fourth umpire will go to the batting captain. Let's say Sri Lanka's batting. Will then ask whether he or she wants rolling. If yes, which roller, and then how long. We'll then relay that message to the curator. So usually, let's say about 9:15 or 9:10 to 9:15, the mowing of the pitch will happen under the supervision of the fourth umpire. Then when we get to 9:30, yes, there is a 20-minute window period. So anytime from 9:30 till 9:50, the rolling can take place. But we usually let the curator do it from 9:30. So that the pitch will now be rolled at 9:30 for, let's say, the Sri Lankan captain chose 7 minutes, will then be rolled from 9:30 to 9:37 under the supervision of the fourth umpire. I mentioned earlier, and you'll find this at most international and provincial grounds where there are 3 rollers available. On the right-hand side, we'll have the big roller, and then left bottom is the medium one, and then there is a hand one. We will give the batting captain at the time the option of which roller to use. The batting captain can then decide, I want the big one, or I want the small one, or the medium one, or no rolling at all. It can happen. Doesn't happen that often, but sometimes you find the batting captain at the time does not want any rolling. It's his or her decision. So are we allowed to water the pitch? Yes, no. This is now once the game has started. Will we allow the curator to take the house and start watering the pitch? Not at all. The law is clear. Once the game has started, pitch not to be watered at all. So for the duration of the match, of our test match, from the start of day 1, 10 o'clock, until close of play, let's say it's 5 o'clock on day 5, pitch not to be watered at all. Are we allowed to remark the creases? Yes, the law allows for remarking of creases, and it usually happens during intervals. You'll often find with bowlers, especially the popping crease, with bowlers landing with their front feet on the popping crease and ball off the ball landing on that popping crease. Sometimes that popping crease, the paint to disappear. The law allow for creases to be remarked, and it usually happens during your lunch and your tea interval. Can happen during drink interval if there is a need. The on-field umpires will usually relay the message to the fourth umpire if they do need marking of the popping crease during a drinks interval. When it comes to maintaining the footholds, again, with the bowlers landing ball off the ball more or less in the same area, you'll often find where that feet lands a hole starting to develop. The law allows for those areas to be maintained. The curator will usually overnight or after the end of the day's play, if the hole did develop, will then returf those footholds because it's important for the bowler to have a secure landing. The bowlers needs to feel when that front foot lands that area is secure. So the law allows for those areas to be fixed, to be returfed, and the curators usually returf it with a very quick sitting filling. They'll put it on the evening of, let's say, day 1. They'll leave it overnight. The morning of day 2, that area is then hard. During play, umpires can allow the footholds to be secured by the use of sawdust, especially if it's still a bit damp, sometimes a bit of rain around where the front foot lands. It is a bit damp. The law allows for, again, the bowler to need to feel secure that where that front foot lands, they need to feel happy. Sawdust can be put on where those feet are landing. Law 10 covers covering of the pitch. And again, we're going to focus on covering of the pitch after the game has started, because before the game starts, the use of covers is the responsibility of the curator and his or her staff, and they can cover the pitch as they see fit before the game has started. And the law also allows for full covering of not just the pitch, but the whole field to be allowed. We'll see in a later slides, there are some grounds that the whole ground gets covered. The law tells us this is now before the game has now started. The ground authority to allow the captains just to have a look at the pitch before the nomination. Law allows for them to just have a look at the pitch, but the slide just covers before the game has started. It's the ground authorities, the curators' a job to make sure that the pitch and or the outfield is covered. But now, once the game has started, the law now tells us that this is now where the umpires plays an important role. Once the game has now started, law guides us by telling us that on each night of the match and in inclement weather, the pitch needs to be covered. The law just speaks about the whole pitch to be covered and 1.22 meters beyond at each end, and the bowler's run-ups to be covered. So just these 2 points where the law just gives us guidance, please cover the whole pitch and 1.22 meters beyond, and the bowler's run-ups where possible. So please, overnight, cover the pitch. In inclement weather, i.e. rain, please cover the pitch. But this is now the law. This speaks about point 1 and 2, but there are playing conditions that tells us or guides us how to cover the pitch. And I'll use Newlands as an example. Newlands in Cape Town, South Africa, where there are about 16 to 17 pitches on the square. So now here playing conditions allows us, and in South Africa, we cover the whole square. We cover the whole 17 pitches, and we also cover the bowlers' run-ups. So we'll do it overnight, where the curator will cover the whole square, i.e. and the square consists of these 17 pitches. Not all grounds have 17 pitches. You'll find, let's say, some grounds only have 10 pitches, but and that consists of the square. So the square will be covered, and bowlers run-ups to be covered. When it comes to the removal of covers, the law guides us by telling us you need to remove the covers as soon as it is practicable. They don't give a specific time. So when it is overnight, please the next day remove it as soon as possible. And if there are inclement weather around, as soon as conditions now permit, please remove the covers. I mentioned earlier that different grounds, they do have different methods of covering the pitch. This is a ground in England, and I'll play you a video and you'll see how they cover their pitches. And we'll see in the latest slide where there is a ground in Sri Lanka, and we'll see how they cover their pitches and outfield. Let's have a look at this video.
This is the scene at Trent Bridge, Nottingham. Second day, game between Nottinghamshire and Durham. The last week started to rain. Special cover is being brought into play and brought to the centre to cover the wicket. Although it's daytime, the lights are on, which just assists the batsman's view a little. Players trudge off into the pavilion. Some of the members have already got their umbrellas up. So this is rather a disconsolate scene as this light drizzle has been falling since the start of play has got a little heavier. We all hope that it won't last for very long. So this is that's the county hall with a green roof, the headquarters of the Nottinghamshire County Council, and over there is the world-renowned, as it said on it, Trent Bridge Inn. So it's Michael Parkinson saying cheerio for now.
So different grounds, they have different methods of how they cover the pitch and the square. And this is an example of a ground in Sri Lanka where they actually cover not just the pitch, not just the square, but the whole of the field. The last law that I'm covering this evening is intervals. So when it comes to an interval in more-day cricket, and I'll use Test match cricket as an example. In South Africa, we play 4-day provincial cricket, as well as there are also 3-day provincial cricket being played. But let's focus on our example of Test match cricket. And what the law say is an interval. There are 5 types of scheduled intervals. What are scheduled intervals? These are intervals that are decided before the game has started. These intervals, and we get guided here by the governing body of cricket for that particular competition. And in Test match cricket, the International Cricket Council, they govern Test match cricket, and they decide in terms of timings, when the game starts, when it ends, when these intervals are, and how long these intervals are. So the first type of a example of a scheduled interval is the period of between close of play on day one and the start of the next day's play. That is a scheduled interval. So using our test match as an example, day one starts at 10, day five, day one starts at 10, close of play is 5 o'clock on day one. Day two will start 10 o'clock again the next morning. So the period between 5 o'clock on day one and 10 o'clock on day two, that is seen as per the law as a scheduled interval. Your interval between innings, scheduled interval. Interval for meals, your tea time, your lunch time, scheduled intervals. Interval for drinks, also a scheduled interval. And any other agreed interval that you might decide before the game has started. So according to the law, these are examples of scheduled intervals, and then the law also and the governing body of cricket for that competition, they then guide us how long these intervals should be. The law doesn't specify the length of or how long it should be. This is where the governing body comes in. So your interval between innings, we'll see in the next slide, it's always 10 minutes. Your interval for your meals, here the governing body guides us. ICC for test match cricket, your lunch interval to be 40 minutes, your tea interval 20. Interval for drinks, again here the ICC guides us by telling us 4 minutes for your drinks interval. And any other agreed interval, the length of that interval will be decided before the game starts. This in terms of times for test matches in South Africa, especially our lunch and our tea intervals. Our lunch interval 40 minutes, 12 till 12:40. Tea interval 14:40 till 3, and close of play will be 5 o'clock on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5. So I mentioned earlier that the governing body, they decide how long these intervals should be. For test match cricket, the International Cricket Council, they decided your lunch to be 40, your tea to be 20. But the ICC guides us in terms of when does this interval start and when it ends. So they guide us by telling us your interval for your lunch and your tea always needs to be the agreed duration. Whatever you decide, if you decide lunch to be 40 minutes, that lunch interval must be 40. If tea is 20, it's 20. If you decide tea is 30 minutes, then tea will be 30. But then the law guides us further by telling us, when does this lunch interval start and when does it end? So they tell us we need to take it from the call of time before the interval until the call of play on the resumption after the interval. I'll use an example to illustrate what the law is trying to tell us. So in the previous slide, we saw the timings for test match cricket in South Africa, lunch being at 12 and ending at 12:40. So what will happen? Let's say if we get to 12, the 6th ball is bowled, you look at your watch, you see it's 12 o'clock. The umpire will then call over, time, and lunch. So lunch will start at 12 o'clock from the moment that the umpire calls time. And that first ball needs to be bowled 40 minutes later. So at exactly 12:40, the first ball needs to be bowled. So practically what happens for us as umpires to make sure that that first ball gets bowled at 12:40, we will take the field 5 minutes before. So at 12:35, we will take the field. Umpires take the field first, then the fielding side will take the field, then the batters. And by doing this, we make sure that that first ball gets bowled at 12:40. It's not always that lunch will be exactly 12 o'clock, because we'll see in later laws that let's say you get to 12 o'clock and you midway through the over. Do you now take lunch? No, we see in later laws that you need to first complete the over. There is a but we'll get to it in later laws. So if we get midway through the over and we look at our watch and it's 12 o'clock, we first need to complete the over and then take lunch. So at 12 o'clock, we've only bowled 3 balls in the over. We now need to complete the 3 balls. And once the 6 legal delivery is bowled, we look at our watch and we now see it is 12:04. So now we call over, time, and lunch. This is now 12:04. And now this is where the law guides us. So we only call time at 12:04. So we must have a 40-minute lunch. So that first ball needs to be bowled exactly 40 minutes later. So what now needs to happen is that first ball needs to be bowled at 12:44. So umpires will take the field at 12:39. Then the fielding side, then the batters, and that's how we make sure that the first ball gets bowled at 12:44. Same principle will apply to T, which is 20 minutes. Our interval between innings, the law tells us it's 10 minutes. So if South Africa gets dismissed at 13:10, the first ball to Sri Lanka needs to be bowled at 13:20. So we saw in the 2 laws ago that when there's a change of innings, we know that rolling will take place. So we'll ask the batting captain, do you want rolling, how long, and which roller? The fourth umpire will then supervise this. Again, the 2 on-field umpires will take the field a few minutes before play is about to start. So in our example, 13:10, South Africa gets dismissed. We now know first ball needs to be bowled at 13:20. Umpires will take the field a bit earlier. They're going to try to make sure that that first ball gets bowled 10 minutes later, which is 13:20. What the lawmakers also decided was to bring a bit of flexibility when it comes to the timing of certain intervals. We saw in previous slides where when it comes to our lunchtime, which is 12 o'clock, tea time, which is 14:40. But the lawmakers decided that we need to bring in a bit of flexibility into the timings of our intervals. And the reason for that flexibility is we know that sometimes things can happen, and the flexibility is therefore so that we can maximize play every day. We're first going to focus on the interval between innings and what flexibility the lawmakers brought in so that we can maximize play. Then we're going to move on to the lunch interval, what flexibility was brought to lunch to try to maximize play. And then we're going to move on to our tea interval and look at the flexibility, and then our drinks interval and look at that flexibility as well. So to kick off with our interval between innings, and what flexibilities are we allowed when it comes to the 10-minute change of innings interval? Firstly, the law tells us if an innings ends 10 minutes or less before the close of play, it will be stumps. No further play on that day. You won't start earlier the next day. I'll use an example to illustrate this. Our test match times in South Africa, we know close of play is at 5 o'clock. So at 16:52, South Africa gets dismissed. What happens next? And this is now where we activate 3.1 under law 11, where it tells us that if an innings ends 10 minutes or less to the close of play, in our example, 16:52 is 8 minutes to the close of play. So this fall within this window period of 10 minutes or less. Now 16:52, South Africa gets dismissed. We know close of play is 5 o'clock. So what do? It's end of the day's play at 16:52. Yes, we stopped 8 minutes earlier. But the law further guides us by telling us we won't start 8 minutes earlier the following day. Another instance when it comes to the interval between innings and where we can save a bit of time, where we can maximize time. If a captain declares an innings or forfeits an innings during an interruption or a scheduled interval of more than 10 minutes, we will incorporate the change of innings interval into that interruption or scheduled interval. I'll use an example to illustrate what this first paragraph is telling us. In our test match, lunch is at 12 o'clock. So at lunchtime, Sri Lanka is 500 for 4. So we know our lunch is from 12 till 12:40. First ball after lunch needs to be bowled at 12:40. At 12:20, the captain of Sri Lanka knocks on the umpire's room and informing the two umpires, umpires, we are declaring our innings closed. So now there will now be a change of innings because now the umpires needs to go to the opposing captain, so to the captain of South Africa, informing him or her that Sri Lanka's just declared, and after lunch they now need to go back. So there will now be a change of innings from 12:10, from 12:20 till 12:30. So from 12:20 till 12:30, what will now happen? We will ask the captain of South Africa, do you want rolling? If yes, how long and which roller? Fourth umpire will then supervise that. And at 12:40, we'll take the field at 12:35 to make sure that the first ball gets bowled at 12:35 to now the openers of South Africa. So this is what this first paragraph is telling us. If there's a change of innings during a scheduled interval or interruption of more than 10 minutes, like in our lunchtime, we will incorporate the 10 minutes interval into our lunchtime. So we don't lose any time. There is a but, and this but is, if less than 10 minutes remains of the interruption or the interval, and then the captain declares, we now need to have a 10-minute change of innings interval, and the next side will bat 10 minutes later. I'll use an example to illustrate this. Our lunch is at 12 o'clock. 12:40, the first ball needs to be bowled. Sri Lanka at lunchtime is 400 for 4. At 12:35, they knock on the umpire's doors and inform us we are declaring. So what now happens? What happens next? We know the first ball needs to be bowled at 12:40, but now the Sri Lankan captain declared at 12:35. So now, because this is less than 10 minutes to go, we now need to be fair on the opposing side. We will now have a 10-minute change of innings from 12:35 till 12:45. First ball now needs to be bowled at 12:45. It is not fair on the batting side now that play to restart at 12:40. I mean, 5 minutes. Openers now needs to get ready. Also, the law allows the now batting captain to have rolling and a max of 7 minutes. So if play was to start at 12:40, I mean, you wouldn't then be able to roll for 7 minutes. So that's why the law now wants a 10-minute change of innings from 12:35 till 12:45, and will allow rolling for 7 minutes. The law allows for lunch and our tea intervals to be changed at any time if we do lose time due to adverse conditions, whether it's ground, weather, or light. So clause 11.4 allows the umpires and the two captains at any time to change their lunch and their tea interval to maximize play. They allow this flexibility, but only if it's through adverse conditions, let's say rain or bad light, you can adjust your lunch and your tea interval if both umpires and captains agree. This is what 11.4 allows us. It allows that flexibility to the umpires and to both captains. And they both need to agree, especially the two captains, if we are going to allow for a change of our lunch or our tea interval. But there are specific instances where if this happens, we need to activate this clause, and no need for captains to agree, no need to go speak to anyone. If this happens, we will then take an early lunch or an early tea, we'll see in the next few slides, or an early drinks break. But let's start with lunch. If an innings ends 10 minutes or less before the agreed time for lunch, we will take lunch immediately. No need to go ask the captains, do you want to take early lunch? Law instructs us. If an innings ends 10 minutes or less, clause 11.5.1 needs to be activated. An example of this, our lunch being at 12 o'clock, at 11:53, Sri Lanka gets dismissed. What happens next? We need to activate this particular clause. Why? Because an innings ended. Sri Lanka was dismissed 10 minutes or less to lunch. 11:53 is less than 10 minutes to lunch. So now we will take our lunch immediately. We will then incorporate our change of innings interval into the lunch interval. So now we took lunch at 11:53. How long is our lunch? We know lunch is 40 minutes. So when should the first ball be bowled after lunch? Well done, correct. At 12:33. Why 12:33? Because lunch is 40 minutes. We took an early lunch because we activated clause 11.5.1, because when an innings ends 10 minutes or less to lunch, we need to take lunch immediately. So we took lunch at 11:53. Lunch should be 40 minutes. So first ball after lunch needs to be bowled at exactly 12:33. Again, when it comes to changing our time for lunch and the flexibility that the lawmakers brought in, and where the law instructs us, if this happens, we will take an early lunch. And point 2 is telling us, if through adverse conditions, let's use rain as an example. If it rains 10 minutes or less to lunch, we will take an early lunch. With our lunch in our test match being 12 o'clock, let's say at 11:56 it starts to rain. What happens next? Here law guides us, law instructs us. Because it started raining 10 minutes or less to the interval, we need to activate this particular clause. So now at 11:56, as the players leave the field, and because this is less than 10 minutes to go to lunch, we will inform both sides that we are taking lunch at 11:56. We know lunch is 40 minutes. When must the first ball be bowled after lunch if conditions permit? Correct. 12:36. The first ball needs to be bowled after lunch if conditions permit. Let's say it stopped raining during the lunch interval and everything is clear. 12:36, the first ball needs to be bowled. So this is just the flexibility when it comes to our lunch time that the lawmakers allowed. If an innings ends 10 minutes or less, we'll take an early lunch. If it starts raining, it can be anything. Adverse conditions, it can be ground, weather or light. 10 minutes or less, we'll take an early lunch. Let's see the flexibility that the lawmakers brought into when it comes to our tea interval. And again, this flexibility is there just to maximize time, to try to play as much cricket as possible during any given day. So 6.1 is telling us, if an innings ends 30 minutes or less before the agreed time for tea, we will take an early tea. We will then incorporate the change of innings interval into our tea interval. It's actually the same principle as in lunch. The only difference here is when it came to the lunch interval, if an innings ends 10 minutes or less, we'll take early lunch. Tea, if an innings ends 30 minutes or less, we will take an early tea. So we'll apply the same principle, but just when it comes to tea, if an innings ends 30 minutes or less. Give an example to illustrate how this work. Our tea time in our test match is 14:40. At 14:25, South Africa gets dismissed. What happens next? Yes, we'll take tea. Why? 6.1 tells us we need to activate this clause. If an innings ends 30 minutes or less to tea, we take an early tea. So in our example, 14:25 is 15 minutes to go to tea. It is 30 minutes or less. We will now take an early tea. We will then inform the captains. It is now. We will take tea from 14:25 until 14:45. First ball of the tea needs to be bowled at 14:45. We'll incorporate our change of innings into the tea interval. So this is the first flexibility that the lawmakers brought in when it comes to our tea interval, how we can play with our tea interval or bring it earlier to allowing us to take it a bit earlier to save time. Second flexibility when it comes to our tea interval. When there are 30 minutes remaining before the agreed time for tea, an interval is already in progress. Play to resume at the end of the 10-minute interval. I use an example to illustrate this. Our tea is at 14:40. So South Africa gets dismissed at 2 o'clock. Can we take an early tea at 2 o'clock? Can we activate clause 1 at 2 o'clock? No, we cannot activate clause 1 at 2 o'clock. Why? Because clause 1 tells us an innings needs to end 30 minutes or less for us to activate this clause, for us to take an early tea. This is now, in my second example, when South Africa gets dismissed at 2 o'clock. It is now 40 minutes to go to lunch. So now what happens? Now we need to have a 10-minute change of innings interval. Our change of innings interval will be from 1400 till 1410. So Sri Lanka, the first ball to the Sri Lankan openers will be bowled at 1410, and we will play from 1410 and we'll take tea at 1440. Next, flexibility that the lawmakers brought into when it comes to our tea interval. If through adverse conditions, it can be ground weather or light. Let's use rain as an example. If we need to leave the field due to rain 30 minutes or less before tea, we will take an early tea. I'll use an example to illustrate this. Tea time being at 14:40. At 14:10, it starts to rain. What happens next? We will take tea. Why do we take tea? We can activate clause 6.3 because it tells us if we need to leave the field through adverse conditions, in our example, rain, 30 minutes or less, and in this example, 14:10 is 30 minutes to go till tea, we take an early tea. So tea will be from 14:10 up until 14:30. First ball needs to be bowled at 14:30, weather conditions permitting. Another time-saving mechanism, if for tea time, if a stoppage is already in progress when 30 minutes remains before the agreed time for tea, we can bring tea forward by 30 minutes. Example to illustrate this, our tea being at 14:40, it starts to rain at 2 o'clock. Can we take an early tea? Clause 3 said to us, adverse conditions, 30 minutes or less. But in this example, it started to rain, 40 minutes to go to tea, 2 o'clock. So now we cannot activate clause 6.3 because it's not 30 minutes or less. We can now only take an early tea once we get to 14:10. That is what point 4 is telling us. So we need to wait 10 minutes. So once we get to 14:10, we take an early tea. And tea will be from 14:10 till 14:20. Sorry, from 14:10 till 14:30. Another time-saving mechanism that the lawmakers brought into when it comes to our lunch and our tea interval. So over the years, they and there's lots of stats to prove this. When a side is 9 wickets down, and no disrespect to any number 10 or number 11 batters, but there's lots of stats that that backs up that if a side is 9 down, that last wicket usually don't last that long. Most of the time, I've seen many long, very long last 10th wicket partnerships, but that's the exception to the rule. Stats prove that final wicket, fielding side usually takes it quickly. So because of this, the lawmakers brought in this time-saving mechanism. If a side is 9 down when it comes to our lunch or our tea interval, it can be either one. I'll use lunch as an example, but the same principle will apply to our tea interval. But the side must be 9 wickets down at our lunch or our tea interval. And if the side is 9 wickets down at our lunch interval or tea interval, we will delay play up to a max of 30 minutes to allow the fielding side to see whether they can take that 10th wicket. We'll give the fielding side 30 minutes to see if they can take the 10th wicket, but only a max of 30 minutes. I'll use 2 examples just to illustrate how this works. And I'll use lunchtime as an example, but remember the same principle will apply to tea time. So our lunch in our test match is at 12 o'clock. We get to 12 o'clock. The umpire look at his or her watch. Final ball gets bowled. It's now 12 o'clock. Looking at the scoreboard, South Africa is 200 for 9. Do we take lunch? No, we don't take lunch. Here we get guided by this particular clause. This is 11.7, and 11.7 tell us if a side is 9 down, in our example, South Africa is 9 down when it came to our lunch interval. So if a side is 9 down, we will not take lunch. We will play a max of 30 minutes. So at 12, South Africa being 9 down, we will not take lunch. We don't need to ask the captains or the batters or anyone. Law instructs us. The side is 9 down, don't take lunch or tea. Play for a max of 30 minutes. So in my first example, we get to 12 o'clock. We now know we cannot take lunch because South Africa is 9 down. So now we can play continue. Let's say we get to 12:10 and now Sri Lanka takes the 10th wicket. So now what happens? Now at 12:10, now we will take lunch. So lunch will be 40 minutes. So from 12:10 till 12:50, first ball after lunch to the Sri Lankan openers needs to be bowled at 12:50. So we will incorporate the change of innings interval into the lunch interval. Again, time-saving mechanism. We're saving time by incorporating now the change of innings into our lunch interval. So that's the first example where yes, the side do take the 10th wicket within that 30 minutes. So we will then take lunch at, in my example, 12:10. But what happens if the fielding side does not take the 10th wicket? And and I said they only get a max of 30 minutes. I mean, we cannot let this go on forever. So the law allows for a max of 30 minutes to see if the fielding side can take it. So with our lunch being, the official lunchtime being at 12 o'clock. So at 12:30, end of the over, Sri Lanka still hasn't taken the 10th wicket. This is now our cut-off time. Now at 12:30, now we need to take lunch. So lunch will now be from 12:30 for 40 minutes. First ball after lunch will be bowled at 12:10. So now let's move on to our drinks interval and what flexibility the lawmakers brought into our drinks interval. Firstly, the law guides us by telling us drinks not to exceed 5 minutes. In Test match cricket, the ICC is specific when it comes to our drinks interval to be 4 minutes. So the time-saving mechanism that the lawmakers brought into our drinks interval is if a wicket falls or a batter retires within 5 minutes to go to drinks, you'll take drinks immediately. I'll use an example to illustrate this, or 2 examples to illustrate this. In our test match, Let's use the first session as an example. First session being starting at 10 and lunch is at 12. So our drinks will be in the middle. At 11 o'clock, we'll take drinks from 11 till 11:04. So at 10:57, a wicket falls. Let's say Sri Lanka is busy batting. They 100 for 3. And at 10:57, the fourth wicket falls. What happens next? Again, to save time, we will now, because this is within 5 minutes of the agreed time to drinks, we'll take drinks. 10:57, drinks will be 4 minutes. So from 10:57 until 11:01 will be our drinks interval. Again, it's just a time-saving mechanism where we don't want 10:57 a wicket falls. Now the new batter comes in, faces 1 or 2 balls, and then we take a drinks interval. So whereas when the wicket falls, because it's 3 minutes to go, less than 5 to go to drinks, we can then, while the new batters coming down the steps onto the field, we can then take drinks. We save a lot of time by doing this. But it must be within 5 minutes of the agreed time to drinks. In just another example, with our drinks being at 11 o'clock, if a wicket falls at 10:54, what happens next? We cannot activate clause 11.8.2. Why? Because the wicket fell 6 minutes to drinks. And 8.2 tells us it needs to happen within 5 minutes. So because the wicket fell at 10:54, 6 minutes to drinks, with our drinks being at 11 o'clock, we will now allow the new batter to come in, and we'll take drinks at 11 o'clock. The last slide that I'm covering before I'm handing over to Tom. The law guides us when it comes to interval for drinks, not to be taken through during the last hour. And then lastly, we covered under law 11, where the law allows for flexibility to be brought into our lunch and our tea time, where we can rearrange it, where we can have an early lunch and we can have an early tea. If we do change our times for our intervals or any times, please inform the scorers as well. Don't just inform the two captains or the two sides. Inform the scorers. Inform the ground staff as well. They're also part of the team. So scorers to be informed, ground staff also to be informed. Whatever changes we make to the playing times. Tom, that's all I'm covering for this evening. Thank you so much. Handing back over to you.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. You deserve an interval after that long lecture of Law 11. Quite a lot for the candidates to absorb, but just know that the Cricket South Africa Level 1 exam is true or false and multiple choice questions. So you don't have to memorize all the content that we are delivering to you. As long as you've got a general understanding, you will see the right answer or know whether a statement is true or false when it appears in front of you. So before I get into the questions in the chat box, I will just once again go through that exam protocols, and I will put up the timetable for the entire course for us to have a full picture of what it is that we are busy with. So I'm going to scroll right back to the slide that I presented on Monday. If you just bear with me while I find it. So here it is, the timetable for the course. You'll remember that there are 42 laws in the laws of cricket, and The book is not for sale, but I have sent everybody a PDF copy on email with our reminder email this earlier today. And what's important to note is we cover 40 out of the 42 laws. So the first 40 laws are examined in Cricket South Africa's level 1 exam. We will cover those 40 laws in the first 6 lectures. Lecture number 7, we will have a revision lecture by Abdullah, and then I will go through the click-by-click demonstration of how to register for and start attempting the online exam. The lectures are free and, as you all know, are being recorded and are posted onto our YouTube channel the next morning after each lecture. There are, of course, exam fees payable if you would like to attempt the exam. The exam fees are 300 South African rands for all candidates in the Republic of South Africa. And then for all candidates outside of South Africa, it's $30 US payable via PayPal, or it is 600 South African rands payable into a account that receives international wire transfers. And exam link emails will only be sent to those email addresses which have sent proof of payment to training@wpcua.co.za. Remember, the payment deadline is Sunday, the 16th of March at 6 p.m. South African time. The following day, Monday, the 17th of March at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. South African time. Let me change that now before I continue. I will be sending out exam link emails to everybody who has sent proof of payment to that email address. And I will reshare my screen so we're all on the same page again. Please, if you are paying for more than one person, then make sure that when you forward the proof of payment, you forward the email addresses of all the candidates that have been paid for. So the exam link email will be sent out to all of those at 9 a.m. South African time on Thursday, the 17th of March, and you will have a 10-day window period until Thursday, the 27th of March at 8:59 a.m. to attempt the exam up to 5 times to achieve the pass mark of 80%. There are 69 true or false and multiple choice questions. So you need to score 56 out of 69 to achieve a pass. Results are displayed immediately on the website after you've submitted your answers. And if you have achieved the pass mark of 80%, your certificate will be emailed to me on the email address training@wpcua.co.za, and I will commit to forwarding you your email address within 24 hours of receiving your certificate. Quite importantly, at the end of the exam window period, on the night of Thursday, the 27th of March, I will send the details of all the Umpires Associations closest to the candidates who have asked for contact details of Umpires Association, so that you may forward your certificate to the Umpires Association and ask them to join, and that's how you will start your umpiring career. Lastly, for those of you who wish to join us for level 2, of course, you need to pass level 1 to attempt level 2. Level 2 will be starting on the 31st of March, which is a Monday. Also, all online in terms of the lectures and the exam. all of that detail will follow a week before the first level 2 lecture. So I hope for those of you who were not here on Monday, that provides a route in terms of what we're going to be doing for the next 3 and a bit weeks. Right, so now we go into the chat box, and Sal Syed asked if I could email him the course content and add him to the email mailing list, and I've done so. So you will receive, along with everybody else, a link to the recording of the lecture tomorrow morning, South African time. Bandile says that the video sound was not very clear. That video that I played where Abdullah was lecturing at Somerset West Cricket Club, how the laws change in terms of when you are playing without bails. Abdullah, I'm going to bring you in here again, please. Can you clarify for Bandile, who couldn't hear very well on that video, the law when the ball just touches the stumps when the bails are off? Will that be out, or does it have to hit the stumps a little bit harder and maybe remove one of the stumps from the ground?
So Bandile, I just first want to make clear that the scenario I'm referring to is when the umpires decided, due to strong winds, to remove the bails. So strong winds here in Cape Town, bails keep on falling off. Umpires then, to save time, decides to remove the bails, and the law also instructs us to remove the bails from both sides. So this is not a scenario where, let's say the bails were on, the bowler delivers the ball, and then maybe a gust of wind blew off the bails. That is a totally different scenario. When we get to later law putting the wicket down, we're going to in specific exactly in that type of scenario, if the bails falls off while the ball's still in play, how to then put the wicket down. But we'll get there. When we get to the law that covers when the wicket is down. This scenario speaks about, because of strong winds, umpires decided to remove the bails due to adverse conditions. Usually at international and provincial level, we do have heavier bails. So we'll first put on the heavier bails and to see if that works. But sometimes you often find, especially in a place like Kaberga in South Africa, where the wind are very strong and even the heavy bails can't sit on top of the stumps. So we remove the bails from both sides. Now the law tells us, for the wicket to be put down, all that now needs to happen is the ball only needs to touch the stumps, to kiss a small touch. If it touches the stumps, the wicket is down. In an example, and I use a few examples, bowler delivers the ball, batter misses the ball, goes past the bat, past the pads, and kisses the outside of the off stump, slightly kisses it. Huge appeal. The fielding side says yes, the ball touched the stumps. Umpires needs to be 100% sure that the ball touched the stumps. Umpires needs to get together. If they're 100% sure that the ball only touched the stumps, batter to be given out bowled. Another scenario, remember the bails are now off. Umpires decided to remove the bails. Ball gets hit into the covers. Fielder picks up the ball. Shy at, let's say, the bowler's end. A batter, let's say, half a meter short, but the ball just kissed the stump, just touched the stumps. Is the batter out or not? Yes, the batter is out because now all the requirement of the law tell us is the ball just needs to touch the stumps for that wicket to be put down. But this is only in the scenario where the umpires decided to remove the belts due to strong winds. In another scenario, which we'll cover when the wicket is down in later laws, where it blows off while play is in progress, there's other methods of putting the wicket down. But in this scenario, only needs to touch the stumps for the wicket to be put down. No need for the wicket to be thrown at the ground, to be removed. Nothing of that. Only needs to touch. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Tula. The next question is also from Bandile. He asks, is the fourth umpire the same as a match referee? Bandile, no. The fourth umpire is sometimes referred to as a reserve umpire, and the duties of the fourth umpire are actually quite a lot. So as Abdullah mentioned, the fourth umpire for a test match, for example, needs to arrive at least 2 hours before the start of play, and he or she will supervise the cutting of the pitch, the mowing of the pitch, as well as the rolling of the pitch. On day one of a test match or before a one-day match or a T20 match, the fourth umpire will also take the selection of new balls to the teams for them to pick balls, and he or she will also make sure that there are sufficient spare balls for relatively different levels of wear and tear in case a ball is hit out of shape or gets lost. Or sometimes what happens is the ball ends up submerged in water, and if the seam is completely wet, then we change the ball to a dry ball that is of similar wear and tear. So the fourth umpire will ensure that those spare balls, firstly, are of the same brand and format as the match ball in use, format being 2-piece or 4-piece. And we'll also make sure using a ball gauge that all those new balls and the spare balls are going through the rings in terms of size and shape. They are still in perfect working order. And then the fourth umpire also brings the drinks on for the on-field umpires during a drinks break. And whenever there is an interval like the lunch break, sometimes the team that is fielding next after lunch or after tea or after change of innings will warm up on the field before the restart of play, and the fourth umpire will ensure that those warm-ups are done in designated warm-up areas. Often there is a warm-up strip prepared by the ground authority. So to ensure that the main playing pitch is not used during warm-ups, the fourth umpire will, we can call it, police the playing strip. The match referee is a completely different person. The match referee oversees the toss and also provides a supervisory role, plays a supervisory role throughout the match. So he or she will sit with the TV umpire and maybe the fourth umpire, if the fourth umpire is also sitting in the TV umpire's room. And the match referee will handle any code of conduct disciplinary hearings, and will also assess the performance of the umpires, of all 4 umpires during a match, and is the first point of call if coaches or management of teams wish to inquire about decisions or protocols that the umpires have given or made. So definitely not the same person. The 4th umpire is very different to the match referee. I hope that answers your question, Bandile. Next question is from Nitin Sharma. Abdullah, I'm going to ask you to take this one, please. What if 9 wickets, or what if the 9th wicket falls at 12:02? So we're supposed to have lunch at 12 according to your test match playing conditions in South Africa. But of course, we can't take lunch in the middle of an over. And now we played until 2 minutes past 12. The 9th wicket falls at 12:02. Do we still take lunch at 12 until 12:40? Well, we've gone past 12. Or do we take lunch at 12:02 until 12:42? This is the 9th wicket falling at 12:02. Please guide us, Abdullah.
Yes, Tom, the law guides us on exactly what to do here. And it was shown in the slide earlier, and I'm going to share my screen again. Just give me a second. Just let me know when you can see my screen. Are you able to see my screen, Tom?
Yes, 100%.
The law guides us, and I'm going to highlight the part that I'm referring to. So if a side is 9 wickets down, anytime leading up to, including the final ball of the over in progress at the agreed time. So what this means practically is, so in your example, so we let's say South Africa is it's now 12:02, but we're still busy with the 4th ball of the over. So we cannot take lunch. We need to complete the over, but South Africa is 200 for 8. So the 5th ball of the over, a wicket falls. The 9th wicket gets taken, the 5th ball of the over. So what happens? The law guides us. That 9th batter, the 10th batter, or the next batter needs to come out and face the next delivery. The side is now 9 down. We cannot take lunchtime. We need to play a max of 30 minutes extra to allow the fielding side or to see whether they can take the 10th wicket. So if they can within the 30 minutes, we'll then take lunch. But if at 12:30 they still haven't taken the 10th wicket, we will then take lunch at 12:30. So just to summarize and to answer your question, any ball leading up even to that final ball of that over, if we take the 9th wicket on the 6th ball of that over, we cannot take lunch. The number 11th batter needs to come in. Because the side is 9 down, we will play a max of 30 minutes extra. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dulak. I'm going to ask you to take the next one as well, please. Bandile asks, are the drinks intervals for other cricket formats the same as in test match cricket? So you mentioned that it's 4 minutes for a drinks interval in test match cricket. Is that the same for one-day internationals and the same for T20 internationals as well, please, Dulak?
No, Bandile. Here we get guided by the governing body of cricket for that particular competition. Like all the law tells us is drinks not to be more than 5 minutes. But the governing body, what they do is via the playing conditions, That's where they guide us on how long these intervals, including the drinks intervals, should be. So yes, our drinks interval in test matches is 4 minutes. Drinks in ODIs or 50 over cricket also 4 minutes. Usually we don't have a drinks interval in 20 over cricket, but in some competitions there are intervals that's allowed, like in SA20 in South Africa. They allowed for strategic breaks of 2.5 minutes. And again, that is playing conditions that was drawn up by the governing body for that particular competition, and they usually guides us how long these intervals should be, and it can differ from format to format, but the playing conditions for that competition, that guides us how long the interval should be. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. I'll add to that. This season in October 2024, I umpired a T10 match for the first time in my career. And there, the playing conditions instructed that after 5 overs, a drinks break would be taken. And the maximum length of that drinks break was 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes. So it does vary, Bandile, from format to format and based on the playing conditions of that particular match or tournament. Next question is from Sanju Buddy. He asks, what is the maximum time for answering the 69 questions in the Cricket South Africa Level 1 exam? Good question, Sanju. It is mentioned in the email that I sent to everyone. You have a maximum of 90 minutes to answer the 69 true or false and multiple choice questions. I, having done this exam many times, I take 30 minutes to get through the 69 questions. I would think that if somebody is doing it for the first time without consulting their law book or the slides that we've sent them, they should be able to take about an hour to get through the 69 questions. But remember that it is an open book exam, so you are allowed to consult your law book. You are allowed to check the PowerPoint presentation that I've sent to you on the course material and logistics email. But just be careful that you don't run out of time, because as soon as you have gotten to 90 minutes, then the next answer that you submit will be the last answer that you submit, and then the website will automatically submit your entire exam for you. And of course, those questions that you have not attempted, you will not receive any marks for. So make sure that you manage your time wisely during those 90 minutes for 69 questions. Next question is from Jeremy Fredericks. Regarding the bails in adverse weather conditions, may heavy bails be used? And can those bails be made heavy because or through steel before considering to take the bails off? So Abdullah, you did mention that we do use heavy bails. Can those bails be made out of any material other than wood? Would steel bails be allowed in any format of cricket?
The law book is quite clear when it comes to the bails as well as the stumps can only be made of one type of material, and that is wood. We must not allow for any other material to be used except wood. So stumps to be wood and those bails to be wood as well. Yeah, law is quite clear. The wording is quite clear in the law book. Stumps and bails can only be made out of wood. We should not be allowing those steel bails, especially. I mean, it is a safety issue. We saw what happened to Mark Boucher. I can remember back in my playing days, We actually use steel bails. I mean, for many for many games when the wind blew in Cape Town, we use those steel bails. Um, we actually thought it was allowed. We thought it was, it was good. The game could continue with bails on. But only once I did my umpiring level one course, I actually saw that it's actually technically not allowed. It must be wooden, and now we know also why we should not be allowing it because of the big safety concern. And we saw what happened to Mark Boutzer. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Tula. Next question is from Marianne Lahadi. If you do not pass on your first attempt, will the next attempt be the same 69 questions, or is there more than one exam? Mary Ann, there is only one set of 69 questions, so you will get the same 69 questions in attempt number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 if you need all 5 attempts. However, the order in which those questions appear will differ from one attempt to the next. This also prevents a father and a son sitting next to each other and attempting the exam together. They will get the same 69 questions, but they won't get them in the same order. So it encourages you to do the exam on your own. Yes, it's an open book exam and you can consult your law book, you can consult the PowerPoint presentation, but please do not consult anybody else when writing the exam. We trust your integrity for the exam to do so. Please and thank you. Next question is from Makaula. He says that he once saw an announcement of a scoring program and he is interested in the quantitative part of cricket. Please, do you have anything in the long run for quantities? So Makaula, we are an umpires association. Western Province does have a cricket scorers association, and you can find their group on Facebook called Western Province Cricket Scorers Association. And you are welcome to give them a shout on their Facebook page and find out if and when they will have an online course. I know that they generally have face-to-face courses in Cape Town. I know that they did have an online course a few years ago during COVID when we only had the option of face-to-face courses, online courses. But yeah, I'm not sure if they still run online courses currently. So I'm just typing into the chat box the full name of the association, and you can look them up on Facebook and you can send them a message to inquire on their courses. Next question is also regarding bails from Philip. Can a plastic bail be used as a replacement bail in a game where there's no wood available? Dula, so let's say a wooden bail breaks and now they only have a plastic bail as a replacement. What do you do then?
The correct answer, as per the law, shouldn't be allowed. The law only allows for wooden bails. That is the answer as per the laws. But yeah, plastic bail, the can also be a bit dangerous. I mean, a hard plastic can ricochet from the stumps into a close fielder's eye or face. Yeah, so the correct answer shouldn't be allowed because it can only be made of wood. Uh, yeah, but I mean, to let the game continue, if it's plastic, I can still live with the plastic bale, but those steel bales, they are definitely not.
I agree with you, Tula. Thanks very much. I see no further questions in the chat box. If there are any more questions from the floor, you are welcome to raise your virtual hand and we will acknowledge you to ask your question live. If not, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your attendance and your interaction. This lecture will be posted on YouTube tomorrow morning. Bandila's got his hand up. I just need to actually allow everybody the option to unmute their microphone. Just bear with me while I do that, and then we will allow Bandile an opportunity to ask a live question. Just one or a few seconds for me, please, while I activate everybody's camera and microphone.
Tom Bandile actually put in the chat box, made a mistake by lifting his hand. Apologies on the hand. So I
Okay,
think he's put it up and put it back down again.
okay. So Sanju says they are not on Facebook, the Scorers Association. Sanju, they definitely are. I always post our umpires courses in the Scorers Facebook page. Let me find it for you and I will copy and paste the link for Western Province Scorers Association for you. Just bear with me while I find it. Western Province Cricket Scorers Association. I think it's actually listed as the WPCSA. Yeah, there it is. So they don't use the full name, they use their acronym, and I'm posting that into the chat box, and you can go visit their page and message them, Sanju. Okay, there is the link in the chat box. Right, ladies and gents, it appears there are no further questions or comments for today's lecture. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your attendance and your interaction. We will reconvene on Monday, the 24th of February, same time, same place, same Microsoft Teams meeting link. Have a great week further. Thank you and good night.